The 2025 season is finally here for the NFL, and if you plan on betting this whole season with your gut or basic research, you're probably going to end up coming out a loser. But there is a secret to long-term success, and that is positive EV betting. In today's video, we're going to explain how to positive EV bet to make the most profits in 2025 for the NFL season. This video will cover the basics of plus EV betting all the way up to advanced concepts. So whether you're a new bettor or more of a professional bettor, stay tuned to this video. Now we're going to start this video off just explaining the core concepts of plus EV betting, just for the beginners that don't understand. Now, this is simply the concept of placing bets that actually have an edge. And the way to find an edge betting sports is to beat the closing line. So the closing line is simply the last number the sportsbook puts out before a game kicks off. So for an example, if it is the Patriots +3 at the closing line and you have the Patriots +6, then you have an edge. Now, the best way to do this is understand where the market is moving early in the weeks to find advantage plays. The reason that beating the closing line is so important is that the final number that the sportsbook comes up with is the most efficient number that the market could set. That means sharp bettors have shaped the lineup with their money. Big liquidity in the market produces really accurate numbers because the line shifts based on how much money is coming in. There's also the most news released. So you know all the injuries right before kickoff. You know what the weather is looking like. You know some of the coaching schemes and everything else that is possible to understand right before a game starts. So if you understand that last number, that closing line number, is so valuable to beat, that's kind of where the concept of plus EV betting is. Historically, especially with football, because it is such a high liquidity market, meaning there's so much money being bet on NFL, the lines shape up very accurately. And historically, if you can beat the closing number, then you will be profitable better. So that's what we're looking to do in this season of football. So how do you actually get value in the market before it closes? So to secure closing line value, like I said, you have to get on a better number than the close. And to do that, it's actually quite simple, especially with the Outlier Pro tool that helps you identify these plays. But let's first talk about some simple concepts that you need to understand. Number one, we need to understand the difference between the sharp books and the soft books. So your soft books, also referred to as retail books, are the ones that you've probably heard of: FanDuel, DraftKings, Caesars, MGM, ESPN Bet. I mean, the list goes on. There are dozens of them. The sharp books are books like Pinnacle, Circa, and Bookmaker. And the reason that these books are much different and considered sharp or more accurate books is because they gather much more information from professional bettors. So for an example, Circa can end up taking $50,000 to $100,000 wagers on some primetime NFL games. Meanwhile, if you go over to FanDuel, they might only be accepting $5,000 to $10,000 from a recreational bettor, and maybe even under a couple $100 from limited accounts. So what FanDuel will do is, if you are a long-term winner, they will limit your account so you can't bet into them. On the other side, we have books like Circa, who, no matter whether you're a winning bettor or losing bettor, they will let you get down as much money as their limits are at that current time. So for an example, if the limit is $50,000, I might be able to place $50,000 on Circa and only $500 on FanDuel. So for me, I'm going to bet on Circa first because I can get the most money down there. So what Circa does is they profile all of their customers. If I am a winning bettor on Circa and they see a $50,000 wager from me going on the Patriots +3, then they want to bump that line down. They'll probably bump it down to Patriots +2 now. They're not hanging that extra point there. So meanwhile, we have Circa getting my information first as a professional bettor, moving their number from 3 down to 2. Meanwhile, FanDuel, because they did not want to accept large wagers, they're not getting that information. So FanDuel is still currently sitting at a 3. So what happens here is we see a book like Circa move from 3 to 2, and we go and look at the rest of the market, the retail books that are slow to move for that number 3. So we are going to grab number 3 on FanDuel, and soon FanDuel will match the sharp books. They typically match their movement we will be sitting at a +3 number while the market has shifted to +2, locking in our value. Now, that is the most simple way to explain it. We can go in so much more detail about when limits shift, when odds move, and when lines move. There's a lot to talk about with this subject, but that is a very simple explanation of how sharp books move, why they move, and how you can lock in the best number. Next, we're going to talk about when is the best time to bet. And I want to go into a little bit more detail about the price discovery process for NFL spreads. Now, I talked about how NFL markets always shape up to the most efficient line. This graph right here is a great way to demonstrate how this actually works and how this price discovery process happens in real time. So I don't know exactly who made this chart. It was someone on Sharp Twitter, and it's been passed around the sports betting community for years now. And it's such a valuable chart to understand and to demonstrate exactly what this process looks like. So what we see here is on Monday or even sometimes Sunday night when lines open up for the following week. Sharp books like Pinnacle, Circa, and Bookmaker, they have their limits set at typically only a couple $1,000s on their opening line. Now, the reason their opening line is they're only accepting $2,000 versus $50,000 compared to game time is because they don't have that information yet. They know that these $2,000 limits or max bets from their customers, their lines could be very far off from what the actual closing number will be. So they're not willing to take massive wagers on their opening number because they're not necessarily sharp yet. They don't have all the information. They don't have any betting action on that line yet. So they are basically opening up this line at low limits and then going to make adjustments from there. So as the week progresses, now we're looking at Tuesday, we see that they might bump up to accepting $10,000 wagers where they've seen some action come in. They have some news now. It's early in the week. The practices are starting up. You know who's on or off the field. You're going to get some more action, some more information. Now, this midweek chunk between Tuesday and Saturday is identified as the value zone because this is where information and the bet value cross each other. And it's because there is more information in the market and the value is starting to decrease at the same time because the more information that gets out there to the public, the value is going to tighten up because these lines are going to get more accurate. So you want to get in on this value zone midweek. And a lot of this is due to, the news breaking about injuries, people getting hurt at practice, and a lot of the other stuff, weather starting to come out. So essentially what you want to do is find a play from Tuesday through Saturday. That's going to be your best chance of locking in value. If you wait until Saturday or Sunday, the market is going to be so liquid and so shaped up to an accurate number, it's going to be hard to find value. So right before game time, you might be able to find a 1% edge. You might be able to find a very small edge. But if you're finding edges earlier in the week, you could close with a larger edge. You could close with multiple points in your favor or, 30, 40 cents in your favor instead of betting it closer to game time where your edge is much smaller. Now, the one thing I will say is that if you're finding edges at these high limits, at $30,000, $40,000 limits, then you can trust that edge is actually true. So someone like myself, I actually like playing small edges in real liquid markets, meaning if the sportsbook is super confident in their number, meaning they're accepting large wagers, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 wagers, and I have a 1% edge, I know that edge is most likely a real true edge because the market is already shaped up. So I don't mind playing later in the week. And you can also find some value early in the week, betting, maybe Sunday night or the Monday morning, opening lines and betting the first movement of the market. The thing here is you're not going to be able to get that much money down on your wager because books are not taking that much action. And number two, you don't have any of the information yet. So if, news breaks against you, you could get destroyed by the closing line. You could be holding on to a really bad bet, or you could be holding on to a great bet come game time. So if you're betting early in the week, you're really opening yourself up to a lot of variance, whether that is positive or negative, you're really opening yourself up to it. Some people, their strategy is to bet early in the week and close very well, and that is definitely a possibility. There are strategies inside every single one of these steps in this price discovery. It's really just a matter of if how much you can trust your edge and how big of an edge do you want to place a bet. So I hope that explained it a little bit better. We're going to hop over to the Outlier Pro page and actually start talking numbers and talking about filter settings to actually find these plays. This is the Outlier Pro plan, and this is their positive EV tool. And this is the tool we're going to use to help us find value during the NFL season for 2025. So the great thing about Outlier Pro is there's so many customizable settings, and I'm going to walk you through each setting, a quick explanation of what each setting is and how I personally set that setting. Now, the great thing with Outlier is everything is customizable. So what I have for my settings should be used as a baseline, but you should make adjustments from there based on your own thought processes and the edges that you're looking for. The number one thing when it comes to positive expected value betting is you have to be able to understand how to find value on your own. This isn't like following someone's picks. You need to find your own play. So if you're just using my strategy to the T, yes, it might work for you, but if you don't understand exactly why everything is set that way and you're not using your own logic and path of thinking, you're going to be leaving some money on the table. So I'll walk you through every single setting here, quick explanation on what it is and how I have it set up. So first of all, we have the DVIG book, which is also what we talked about as sharp books. And luckily, Outlier has the three sharpest books in the market when it comes to NFL lines. They have Pinnacle, Circa, and Bookmaker. So those are the books that we want to use as our sharp book. Essentially, what it means is use these three books as our source of truth and then compare their lines and prices to the rest of the market to find an edge. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set all three of these books to optional, meaning because they don't always have the same exact line, especially Circa and Bookmaker. They typically only will set main lines and they won't place a bunch of alternate lines. So Pinnacle will set alternate lines. So if the main line is set at +7, they might have a +7.5, a +8, a +8.5, all those numbers that you can bet. Meanwhile, Circa does not. So if we put optional and made two minimum books, we might be missing out on a lot of plays. So set your minimum books to 1 on this option, and then uniform weight. I think they're all pretty evenly strong with setting prices and moving their market. So it's a 50 parts Pinnacle, 50 parts Circa, 50 parts Bookmaker. And if this is something you want to tweak, you think Circa is a little sharper, then maybe you bump them up to 75 and you filter from there. But right now, it's pretty standard. I keep it the way it's set, which is 50 parts each. It's equal weighted system. Now, the DVIG method is this is how you remove the VIG from a line. So there's VIG baked in, which is the tax or the juice or the house edge. That's what the VIG is. So the DVIG method is a mathematical formula that removes the VIG. The problem is you don't know which side of the line the VIG is always on. So if you use multiple different DVIG methods, you can really have a good chance of knowing exactly where the VIG is. So what I would recommend and what I use most of the time is I just use the multiplicative method because I don't bet in crazy high odds ranges where the VIG is really uncertain. Most of the markets I'm betting in, the VIG is most likely almost split 50-50, and the multiplicative method does a really good job of factoring for that. But if you want it to be super conservative, then I would use the worst case method, which basically means you're using the worst case out of the additive, the shin, the power, and the probit method, which is going to just be a real conservative approach. But for this example and for what I use personally, I'm just using the multiplicative. Now, variation is basically the percentage gap that your sharp books agree or disagree with each other. So a lot of the time you might want to set your variation to a low number, meaning you don't want your sharp books to be really disagreeing with themselves and one book weighing the market in one direction. I personally just leave this at 0, and I just look at the actual numbers of the sharp books to make sure that they're in the ballpark. You really want all your sharp books to agree with each other. You don't want a huge variation in between. But I just kind of do the eyeball check when I'm looking through the odds screen and to make sure the variation isn't that high. But another conservative approach would be setting this variation number tight, like to 1 to 3% or something like that. Now, Kelly multiplier is a way to optimally have the right bet size for your edge and win probability of that event. Now, it's pretty standard to use half Kelly. That's what I always use. So basically using the Kelly criterion formula and then multiplying it by 0.5 to come up with half Kelly. That's what I typically bet. It basically will spit out a percent of your bankroll that you should be betting on each bet, and it's the optimal formula to use. If you are new to betting, I would maybe go a quarter or an eighth Kelly until you start understanding the concepts. But at this point, I'm confident in the edges I'm playing. I'm going to be staking a little extra money. So half Kelly is definitely recommended. I would not go full Kelly. It's just a little bit, it's very, very aggressive. The reason that it's too aggressive is that with sports betting, you don't know your actual edge. It is all presumed, and there's no actual guarantee of what your edge is. If you are flipping a coin, you know what your edge is. That's where you would bet full Kelly. But for sports betting, it's a little unpredictable. As much as we think we can predict it and make profits on it, there's also a little bit of unpredictability. So half Kelly is what I would recommend for your Kelly multiplier. Minimum EV percentage. Now, this is where I disagree with a lot of people. I disregard EV percentage. I think it is one of the most overrated stats that you're looking for when you're positive EV betting. I focus largely on market movement, market shifts, and things like that. So I play a lot of small edges that close with large edges. So we'll get into that for later. But I would set this down to 0. I want to see every edge on the board, and I'll do a little more deep diving into that edge when I pull up the numbers to find the bets. So for an example, I find a lot of good bets at 1% and a lot of bad bets at 5%. So for me, EV percentage is a little bit overvalued. I would leave it at 0 to find all the plays in the market. Kelly percentage is basically, how much of your bankroll do you want a minimum on a bet? I would just leave that as 0. I don't care if Kelly is recommending me to bet a quarter of a unit or 3 units. I do want to see them all. Now, VIG percentage, same type of thing. This is how much VIG is baked into these lines. I really don't care either. Using the DVIG method, we're removing the VIG. So even at some really large VIGs, it's not a problem to me. It's getting removed, and especially if you're using worst case scenario, then you're definitely removing the VIG very cautiously. No VIG odds. So this is a setting that I have to plus 150 typically. I will sometimes put it up to plus 200. And this is just the odds range that you're betting in. So I don't bet anything over plus 200 for the most part. And that's because you're introducing a lot of variance if you start betting over plus 200. At plus 200 odds, you're basically expected to win about 33% of your bets. So I don't love betting anything past that because the win probability is just very low, even though there is value past 200. That's a personal preference for me. I keep it at plus 200, but for new bettors, I would actually recommend going to plus 150, which is more of a 40% chance of winning, I believe. So I wouldn't go under that. Market width is another number that I pretty much ignore. There's a lot of reasons to ignore this number, I think, personally, but I leave market width at the max. And then game lines. So it all depends on what we're going to attack here for bet types. We're going to leave it on game lines because we're looking at NFL game lines. That's what we've been talking about this video. Date range for NFL, we are looking weeks out, so we want to leave this wide open. Leagues, we're looking for the NFL. If you want to look for different markets, you can select that. So here's another one as well. Outlier has the pinnacle limits and how much they're willing to accept. So here, if you want to, I would probably recommend playing above like $5,000 limits if you're first starting out, because the market is starting to shape up. You're kind of in that value zone of, limits increasing and information coming out. So I would typically recommend betting over $5,000 pinnacle limits. You just can't trust the pinnacle odds that much yet until they get over that $5,000 hump. And then obviously they have all the books on Outlier that you can filter for. And let's see, I have 5 results right now. We are a week and a half out from the week 1 game. So I'm going to make another video later in the season explaining the more, day-to-day betting process. And this is a far lookout. So let's just look at what Outlier has flagged for us and go from there. So these are all small edges. We have the Buffalo Bills -3 at home against Baltimore here. And this is on Hard Rock. So if we open this up, we can see what the price of Pinnacle is. So Pinnacle has the Buffalo Bills at plus 125, minus 143. We can get it 10 cents better on Hard Rock. And if we remove the VIG, because a no VIG market would be plus 125, minus 125. So this extra cents here on the bottom is what we would call our VIG, and the true value lies somewhere in the middle. So with the VIG being removed, the true value is plus 132 compared to the Pinnacle odds. So basically what this means is if we can get a better price than plus 132, then we have an edge. Plus 135 is a better payout than plus 132, which means we have a bet. You can also see the Pinnacle limits here, which is very important. We have a $5,000 max bet. This is on the lower side of when we should really be betting using Pinnacle odds, because the limits are kind of low. Now, with that being said, we're betting, over a week and a half out. Typically, if we were betting, the week of game time, this would probably be at $10,000, $20,000 limit. So we'll get into that for more details later. But the other thing I like to look at is you also want to see the rest of the books. Even though we don't really care about the other retail book prices that much, it's always good to see a real outlier to the market. So if we look at the other books that have this line out, Bet365 is only priced at plus 114, so big value to Bet365. And also Bovada here is at plus 120. So truly an outlier, Hard Rock is here at this plus 135 number. So all signs point to this being a good bet. The other thing that you can check here is the line movement. So we want to see Pinnacle, the sharp book, moving their line either downwards, dropping their value on their line, or stable. So this is a stable market where this line has not moved for over a day now. Pinnacle has been set at plus 125 and they have stayed there. So they're pretty confident in their number. They're not moving in one direction. We do have a video about line movement, which will really break down what you're looking for here. But this is probably a play. This is a play that I probably would not take just because the edge is so low. The confidence level of Pinnacle is also kind of low at 5K. So really not a play I would touch, but we are getting close to a play that looks good. I'm not saying this is a bad play, but we are a week and a half out from the game, and the edge is so small that this number could move a lot against us or for us. But not a play I would take, but a little bit of the thought process going through there. If you guys have any more questions about anything I didn't get to cover in this video, please leave it in a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. We're going to be posting a bunch of content this NFL season. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully we can lock in some value this year.